Hello, over the past few days there has been an interesting discussion going on Polkadot Twitter and mainly on this Polkadot forum website about a new DEX being built onto Statemint, which is Polkadot's common good parachain. Even Donnie tweeted about it. Let's see what has been proposed and what such Polkadot's native DEX could mean for users, parachains and the whole ecosystem. To be clear, nothing has been officially proposed in Polkadot's on-chain governance. For now, these are just discussions and speculations. The idea of building a DEX on Statemint was revived by Joe Petrowski in this post of his 5 days ago on Polkadot forum. Here he outlined his personal vision for the next year of Statemint with all the potential upgrades. Truly interesting read. Joe Petrowski is well known in Polkadot's developers community. He is a common good parachains team lead at Web3 Foundation. What he is proposing is to build a decentralized exchange onto Statemint, which would be similar to Uniswap v2 style of DEX. He mentioned that there have been talks about building a DEX on Statemint since the launch of Polkadot, and despite him being for a long time against this idea, within last year he has changed his mind on this issue and now he proposes to build a DEX on Statemint. He further explained his reasoning and why he believes this would be a beneficial step to the DOT-Sama ecosystem. This DEX on Statemint would serve as a path for swapping from DOT to any parachain native token, so the DEX would provide maximum usability and highly user-friendly trading environment for the whole Polkadot and Kusama community and potentially could help to spark further adoption of the ecosystem. The DEX would provide parachain teams and their users permissionless and decentralized access to very deep liquidity in Polkadot without having to rely on integration with centralized exchanges. Needless to say, the DEX should be trustless, which means it would not be subject to any parachain's governance and would be fully governed by Polkadot's governance and hence solely by DOT token holders. Now, one would say, yes, let's build Polkadot's Uniswap, a DEX with a sleek, user-friendly UI, with deep liquidity and with all Parachain's native tokens available to swap almost for free in a permissionless, decentralized and trustless manner. It makes one think that such DEX would definitely help to drive adoption, because perhaps we all kind of feel that our ecosystem really needs one killer app and this DEX could be just that. But as I found out from reading many wise and constructive comments from several dev teams building on Polkadot, the question whether to build a DEX on Statemint or not is not so easy to answer. For example, there is this post from Luke, a contributor to Moonwell, lending and borrowing protocol on Moonbeam and Moonriver. He listed several arguments against building a DEX on Statemint. First of all, the DEX would probably be built by Parity, the company developing Polkadot and Kusama, and as such, Parity would basically compete with all DEXs built on parachains and also with actual parachains which provide automated market makers and token swapping on their DeFi dApps, such as Parallel Finance, Akala or Mangata Finance. He literally said it would do irreparable harm to the Sama ecosystem. Another big challenge would be to secure sufficiently deep liquidity on this DEX. Initially, securing deep enough liquidity is always an uneasy task for any DEX, as all DEXs and DeFi-focused parachains compete for liquidity for their trading platforms, because naturally liquidity is always limited, even more so now. Low liquidity of trading assets often results in high price slippage when swapping a greater amount of assets. That means very bad user experience for traders, and at some point this could simply discourage users from using such a DEX altogether. So in order to secure deep enough liquidity on this Statemint's DEX, token holders would need to be incentivized to provide liquidity with their tokens in liquidity pools. So liquidity providers would probably be incentivized with DOT, which might increase the annual inflation a little bit, or at least the circulating supply of DOT. Luke in his post also further reminded that the resources needed to build and operate an effective DEX are vast: money, workforce, and these resources could be always utilized in some other way for the common good of the ecosystem. Joe Petrowski addressed some of these raised concerns in his another post, this one. I will rather quote read exactly what he wrote, as I dare to say that his words for the most part match the view of the substantial part of Polkadot's community. But I hear much more often the opposite, that Polkadot as a network is not able to compete with other layer 1s because it does not have a DEX. I overwhelmingly hear that not having a DEX is what's causing irreparable harm to the Dotsama ecosystem. Maybe there have been hopes that by now Akala DEX would be a one-to-go place to trade and swap many Parachain native tokens, or maybe that multi-headed monster called Hydra DX would live up to its projected vision to become a liquidity hub for the whole Polkadot with their multi-asset liquidity pool, Omnipool. But Akala is having its own issues and the launch of Hydra DX just takes longer than expected, and again there are still not so many HRMP channels built between parachains, so having one DEX providing access to all Parachain native tokens is not possible yet anyways. Also, Donnie had something to say on this issue. He believes this DEX could be the biggest catalyst for DOT. He called this potential Statemint DEX Uniswap of Polkadot, serving as a trustless hub for liquidity governed by DOT holders. According to Donnie, this DEX would streamline user experience for Polkadot users as all Parachain native tokens would be accessible in one place. Even when I, just an average Polkadot enthusiast and believer, start thinking about this vision of DEX built on Statemint providing high accessibility to all Parachain native tokens, I am getting pretty excited and I am becoming to be in favor of this idea, although I am aware that all implications and consequences of building DEX on Statemint are beyond my understanding. I also reviewed the comments under Donnie's tweet and most people also seem to support this idea, but certainly not everyone. Alice and Bob thinks it would mean that Polkadot's governance would have to step into the politics of fighting for liquidity with parachains and with DEXs built on parachains. This one is also a strong argument against it, suggesting that seeing parity building a competitive DEX could discourage some development teams from building on Substrate and force them to build in another ecosystem. Other people just seem to wish for a user-friendly DEX with a simple UI, great UX, with accessibility to all ecosystem tokens and overall providing a simple on-ramp for new users coming into Polkadot ecosystem. More than ever, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you think a DEX on Statemint governed by DOT holders is something very much needed in our ecosystem, or do you worry it could harm some parachains? Thanks for watching and see you next time.